Of course, our passports are still Indonesians. But nothingness made us Indonesians only on paper. Nothingness excludes us from all the motherland's plans. Quite heavy words, right? Those lines come from the poem titled We Are Already Nothing Again, written by an Indonesian migrant domestic worker in Hong Kong, known by her pen name, Migrant. So let's talk about her story. Now, before Hong Kong, Mega wasn't always a domestic worker. She painted, imagine that, brushes, colors, canvas, probably a kind of peaceful life that we've all imagined at some point of our life. But life had other plans. Family expectations, conflicts, and unhappy marriage drove her into a difficult situation where she needed a job, urgently. And like many others, she turned to migrant domestic work. And she's far from alone. There are approximately 400,000 migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong, most of whom come from the Philippines and Indonesia. These workers provide essential services such as childcare, elder care, cleaning, household management for the city's middle-class family, especially those with both parents working. Think about it. Without them, how many of those families would actually be able to function? The growing reliance on domestic workers to support Hong Kong's high-demand economy and fast-paced lifestyle cemented their role as indispensable labor. However, their status as non-resident workers and vulnerability to exploitation continues to shape their working lives. The contradiction is, they're essential, yet they're often invisible. So back to Mega. She arrived in Hong Kong and entered her first job as a domestic worker. She worked obediently, and in her own words, I tried to eliminate my selfish ego and turn my body into a mechanical robotic domestic worker. A robot, not a person, not a daughter, not a painter, just a function. From house cleaning, cooking to babysitting, Mega occupied every detail and corner of the couple's family life. But at the same time, she was never truly incorporated or accepted. Why? This is probably because of the live-in system in Hong Kong. In the Standard Unified Contract, a contract that many of those workers signed before entering the city, lies a compulsory clause that stipulates residency within the employer's household. That means within the 2-year contract effective period, every single day they live with their employers. Now imagine you living with your boss or your teacher every single day. 2 years. Yes, no, not ideal, at least, right? Now, because of the system, employers have to allocate a portion of their living spaces to those workers. And we all know what that means in Hong Kong, a place where skyscrapers squeeze into each other like minions in a meeting, and a place where every single square foot is calculated with Hong Kong dollars. Here's Myrna's example from South China Morning Post. From a storage room in the morning to her sleeping space at night, it's a public transit indoors. A must visit if you happen to want to wander around this night for random reasons. Don't even worry that you might wake her up. Privacy, that's a luxury. So back to our story. While Mega dived into those long hours and hard days, her workload only seemed to expand with her abilities. By the time of realization, she has been working with a monthly wage of 1,250 Hong Kong dollars, far meager to the minimum wage and with a below standard holiday count. She continued to work with those employers despite those violations. Why is that? Well, now we could set eyes on the 2-week system, the countdown, or the great escape, I call it. In essence, once the contract terminates, migrant domestic workers have exactly 2 weeks to seek new employment before they're deported from the country. 2 weeks. This is what the framework looks like. It's a little bit complicated, but let's focus on the premature termination over there. This is what many like Mega worry about. Set aside whether Mega's concern would be considered as exceptional circumstances over there in the first place. There are still 2 hurdles to cross before she could change her employer. First, actually finding an employer that would accept her within 2 weeks. And second, leaving the country for a waiting period as they review her request, usually back to her home country, before receiving a rejection stamped on paper. Still 2 weeks to leave the grocery store that you visit each day, the closets that hid your dreams at night. Still 2 weeks to ponder for an alternative solution in paying your debt, and which, by the way, according to Enrich Hong Kong, 83% of migrant domestic workers are in debt. Still 2 weeks until you go home and face your starving children and drunk husband, and only to start questioning yourself, what comes next? For Mega, she turned to poetry. But she didn't stop there. She created a wall magazine at the Migrant Center where workers could share their poems, drawings, and even prayers. It became more than a creative space. It became a space to say, I'm struggling too. Or maybe even, I'm still here with you. Imagine hundreds and thousands of voices like that coming together. That's how movement began. The Day Off campaign, where migrant domestic workers gather and start demanding something so basic yet so powerful, a day to rest, a day to be human, not a robot. And they didn't just ask quietly, they persisted, they organized, they supported each other, and in 2013, they won a major victory, a guaranteed weekly day off. Now today, when you happen to hop off a taxi on a breezy Sunday afternoon in the central status square of Hong Kong, you see progress. Roads closed, the financial district slows down, and suddenly the city transforms. Domestic workers gather in huge numbers, sitting on cardboard mats, laughing, singing, calling home. And suddenly the city belongs, if only for a day, to those workers that keep it running all week. Friends gathered, food shared, laughter fills the air. It's vibrant, it's loud, it's alive. And those Sunday rituals are not just hangouts, and no, it's not just a picnic. It's visibility, it's reclaiming space. It's a celebration of resilience, of community, and of the rights that were fought for and won. So please bear with me as I finish with another of Mega's poem, Women, Daughters of the Earth. I am, of course, your daughter, being forced to be a domestic worker, to wander around rather being nothingness, rather missing her womanhood, and only to be a doormat of a man's foot that I strongly refused. I am an Indonesian woman, a woman of the day, a woman of Earth people, who can refuse my sorrows, my pains, and sorrows and wounds of mine. I do not want to share them with you. Sorrows and pains that can't be calculated by Sapoa. I am not you, motherland, not a woman from the past who is passively and quietly waiting for. I am a fighting woman, conquerors of days and nights, who can fight against challenges, also indignities by men. From invisible to visible, this is the journey, a continuing journey of our most intimate labor of care. This is the journey of migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong. This is Rachel. Thank you for listening.